It has been nearly a month since the island nation Sri Lanka plunged into an acute economic crisis and what has been referred to as one of the country's most stressing moments to date. The people of Sri Lanka are reeling under soaring inflation and massive shortages of fuel, gas and even everyday staples. The government meanwhile has announced that it will reach out to the World Bank after President Gotabaya Rajapaksa said last week that Colombo was relying on International Monetary Fund for a bailout.
Serpentine queues, hours of waiting with no certainty of getting the required amount of fuel or food. Helpless Sri Lankans are enduring the most troubled phase of their lives as the island nation grapples with a rapidly deteriorating economic crisis. It has triggered a situation of unrest where people, led by opposition parties, have taken to the streets demanding the country's government to go. In the latest government decision, Colombo has deployed the military at gasoline stations, calling it a preventive measure to avoid chaos and conflicts. A 70% drop in foreign exchange reserves since January 2020 has left Sri Lanka struggling to pay for essential imports, including gasoline. The situation has also paved way for unprecedented inflation, with prices of everyday commodities skyrocketing by the day. The sales graph is sagging and price indices have spiked suddenly.
දැන් බිල් ටු බිල් නේ සල්ලි දීලා බඩු ගත්තේ නැත්තම් බඩු නැහැ කඩේට. ඒ වෙලේ කෑෂ් දීලා බඩු ගන්න ඕන. ඒ කියන්නේ හදිස්සියට මිනිහෙකුට ණයකට ගමිය අහලා බලලා මිනිහට ණයකට මොකක්වත් දී ගන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා. මොකද සල්ලි දීලා බඩු අරගෙන ණයට දෙන්න බෑ. ඒ වගේ තත්ත්වයක තමයි දැන් අද අපි වෙලා ඉන්නේ.
The government said it will seek World Bank assistance to stave off a severe economic crisis, in addition to an International Monetary Fund rescue plan to be discussed next month. As per the sources, to seek a way out of the crisis, Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa will fly to Washington DC next month to hold talks with the IMF and also officials from the World Bank. The World Bank typically extends support to boost exports, improve economic competitiveness and aid growth. Holding paltry reserves of $2.31 billion as of February, the country has to repay about $4 billion in debt over the rest of this year, including a $1 billion international sovereign bond that matures in July. Unrestrained inflation, people say, has become a matter of grave concern as they are finding it hard to purchase even everyday essentials.
ළමයි තුන් දෙනෙක් ඉන්න මට. ඒ ළමයි තුන් දෙනාගේ අනාගතය බලන්න ඕනේ, උගන්වන්න ඕනේ. ඒවත් ඔක්කොම කරගෙන කන බොන එකත් කරගෙන යන්න වෙනවා. බැරිම වෙච්ච කාලේ තමයි හාමතේ අපි ලංකාවේ මිනිස්සු ඔක්කොම මට විතරක් නෙමෙයි මේක ලංකාවේ මිනිස්සු ඔක්කොටම මේ සිද්ධ වෙන දෙයක්. මිනිස්සුන්ට මැරෙන්න තමයි වෙන්නේ එහෙම වුණොත්. කැම්බීම නැතුව සල්ලි තිබ්බට වෙලාවකට කණ්ඩ නැහැ, කණ්ඩ බඩු ගන්න නැහැ, වෙලාවකට බඩු තියෙනවා සල්ලි නැහැ. දැන් මිනිසුන්ට කොච්චර සල්ලි තිබ්බත් ගන්න බඩු නැහැ. පිටි ටික නැහැ, සීනි ටික නැහැ.
Earlier, after the appeal made by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, the government had imposed curbs on the import of non-essential commodities, including fish, footwear and wine. In what could be termed as a shot in the arm to its efforts at securing some funds, the government has also received aid in the form of a credit line of $1 billion from its neighbor India. China too is considering a $2.5 billion loan to pull it out of the crisis. The government of Sri Lanka had assured last month that the crisis won't last more than a few days, but the current situation indicates that the crisis is not just widening across the island, but is set to bring troubles that will not just damage the country's economic dynamics, but will simply become unmanageable for the Rajapaksa government.